Good evening. Welcome to the July 10th, 2017 Troy City Council meeting. We are pleased this evening to have Pastor Vince Messina from Woodside Bible Church with us to lead us in the invocation. Please stand for the invocation and then remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. Good evening, Pastor.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, City officials. Let's pray together, please. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this beautiful summer day you've given us. We thank you for the things we've been able to accomplish by your strength. And Father, we would pray for this council this evening as they transact the business of our city, that they would do so with wisdom and discernment and knowledge. Father, that you just give them grace. Thank you for the city of Troy. Thank you for our first responders, and ask that you'd watch and protect over them as they protect and serve this city. And Father, for your leading and direction in all that is handled and transacted this evening, we thank you and pray in Jesus' name. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Pastor. Troy City Council meeting is now called to order. The roll call, Ms. Dixon.
Mayor Slater.
Here.
Councilmember Abraham.
Here.
Councilmember Baker.
Here.
Councilmember Henderson.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Hoderick.
Here.
Councilmember McCown.
Here.
Councilmember Pennington.
I did receive correspondence from Councilman Pennington that he would be out of the county this evening, so I will move that the Troy City Council hereby excuses the absence of Councilman Pennington at the regular City Council meeting of July 10th, 2017, due to being out of the county.
Support.
Moved by the chair and supported by Councilman Henderson that we excuse the absence of Councilman Pennington at the regular City Council meeting of July 10th, 2017, due to being out of the county. Discussion? The vote, Ms. Dixon?
Mayor Slater.
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham.
Yes.
Councilmember Baker.
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Hoderick.
Yes.
Councilmember McCown.
Yes.
Motion passes. First on the agenda are certificates of recognition and special presentations. C1 is a Safe Built Scholarship presentation. I'd like to introduce Paul Featherstone, the Safe Built Building official, to make a presentation this evening. Good evening, Paul.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor.
Good evening, Paul.
Members of council. Today's that one time of the year that I do get to come up and give out the scholarships. As you know, Safe Built partners with the city of Troy to give out 2 scholarships a year to 2 outstanding students, and we had many, and it's really hard to only choose the 2, but Cindy did a great job along with another group, about 5 people to choose. So I'm going to go ahead and let her do the intros.
Thank you, Paul. Good evening, Cindy.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Ladies, young ladies can come up. As Paul said, the Youth Achievement Awards, that Safe Built Awards, they honor and recognize the teens that live in Troy, have made a significant impact on the Troy community through volunteer work and or special deeds in action, and who demonstrate exceptional leadership in their career and academic purpose. The first place awardee this year is Neha Paragi. She's a 2017 Troy High School, Athens High graduate. She graduated with a 4.44 GPA, and in her 4 years at Troy High successfully completed 17 AP classes, as well as a number of honor classes. In addition to her exceptional academics, she's also been an active member in many extracurricular activities, including Student Congress President of the Class of 2017, National Honor Society, Indian American Student Association, Project Lead, Future Problem Solvers, Step on Poverty, and the Science Olympiad. She played violin in the orchestra, was first oboe chair in the band, played soccer, and ran track. She's also the co-founder and CEO of Got Cupcakes, a nonprofit business providing approximately $4,000 to many student groups. In the fall, she plans to attend the University of Michigan, majoring in industrial operations, engineering, and business. So it's my pleasure to that we award her the $1,000 scholarship. Thank you.
Thank you for having me tonight, City Council, and thank you, Safe Built, for awarding me the scholarship.
It's our pleasure.
Thank you. Congratulations.
Then our second place winner, she's no stranger to this room because she is the student rep for the Planning Commission. Claire Howe, she will start her senior year at Troy High this fall, and in 3 years, she successfully completed 12 AP and honors classes. To date, she has an impressive GPA of 4.24, and she also earned a perfect score on her ACT. In addition to her academics, Claire was also actively involved in extracurricular activities including Troy High Health Occupation Students of America, National Honor Society, Science Olympiad, Country Fiddlers, and she was a Bolin Park Middle School Science Olympiad student coach. She's going to be the cross-country captain and the Symphony Orchestra vice president in the fall. And her volunteer efforts, as I said, reach beyond the school district as she completed her first year as student rep on the Planning Commission, and they asked her if she would do a second year. So Claire Howe.
Sorry. Thank you.
$500 winner.
Thank you. Thank you, Safe Built. Thank you, City Council. Thank you for letting me be a part of the Planning Commission. Thank you, Ms. Stewart, for always helping me be a part of the City Hall. And I look forward to doing it again next year.
Thank you.
You good?
Yep, very good. Thank you again.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Congratulations. Well done. Thank you. There are no carryover items this evening, so we will move to public hearings. We have two this evening. First is E1, a conditional rezoning application, file number CRCP-CR 2016-004, which is a proposed Tisbury Square townhomes, FKA Livernois/Haldane townhouses, which is on the west side of Livernois, south of Square Lake, Section 9. A request from RT1 Family Attached Residential to District to NNQ, which is Neighborhood Node Q District. I see Brent Savanant is here to introduce this item. Good evening, Brent.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council. Two very tough acts to follow.
Yes.
Feel very humbled being up here.
4.2. They didn't even have that when I was in school.
Yeah, it's impressive. So the applicant for this project is Livernois LLC, and Livernois LLC seeks a conditional rezoning of the subject property from RT1 Family Attached to the neighborhood node NN District. In this case, it's node Q. As part of the application for conditional rezoning, the applicant submitted a preliminary site plan for a 43-unit townhome project and these units are all 3 stories in size. I want to be clear on something. This slide, I think, helps to demonstrate the point I'm trying to make. Usually when there's a rezoning application and a site plan, the properties of the project are the same. So what's being rezoned and the site plan they're the same boundaries. In this case, the property that's being proposed for rezoning is the back 1 acre. The subject property itself that's proposed for the 43-unit development is 2.8 acres, but what's being proposed for rezoning is only this 1 acre part. It's the rear third of the property. Sometimes it's difficult to grasp that. So when I show the zoning map here, what's proposed to be rezoned is this back portion here. That's the brown that is zoned RT. So if you look at abutting properties, to the west and to the south is also RT. These are duplexes presently. To the north is Big Beaver. This is a mix of commercial and office. There's also office here across the street to the south, across Haldane. I just want to be clear on how this is all working.
Square Lake.
Square Lake.
Square Lake, excuse me. It's Monday.
Yes.
So a very brief summary of the proposed project. It is a 43-unit site condominium. If they get the approval of the conditional rezoning, this is what it's going to look like. This is a landscape rendering. It is a node. As you're aware, with nodes, there's a stronger relationship with the street. So they're proposing the buildings that front on Livernois. This is Livernois to the right or to the east. These are to have a 15-foot setback from Livernois. and the buildings along Haldane are to have a 10-foot setback. Two curb cuts providing internal circulation. Note the internal park here with the connection through these two buildings to Livernois. Now, it is a conditional rezoning, and the applicant has voluntarily offered these conditions, and I'm going to flip back to the previous slide to show you what I'm talking about. So one of the conditions is the westerly 9 units are going to be in 3 buildings here along this property line. When we first saw this application, it was actually a grouping of, there was a 4-unit building and a 5-unit building, and there was only one gap. And the Planning Commission suggested that it would probably be a better relationship with the duplexes to the west if it was broken up. So the applicant agreed to voluntarily reduce it from, it was a 5 and a 6, it was 11 units, a 5-unit building and a 6-unit building. The applicant removed 2 units and submitted instead 2 3-unit clusterings that you see here. He also proposed a 35-foot setback to the west. Previously, it was 30 feet. So this relationship here, as a transition, was 5 feet closer. Planning Commission suggested that moving it back 35 feet would equal the setback here to the west. And the applicant voluntarily agreed to move that back to 35 feet, just to be a better neighbor. And coupled with breaking this building up, it just served as a better transition with the neighbors. The third condition was a 3-foot setback for the road from the north property line. That's up here. This is a dentist's office, and the dentist came and spoke at the public hearing. He owns the existing concrete wall that's there. His concern was the potential for cars that were rounding the curve, hitting the wall and damaging the wall. So the applicant voluntarily agreed to move that back 3 feet to separate that with the curbing so that it would not be hit. And finally, the applicant agreed to hold the maximum height at 36 feet. This is what the buildings are going to look like. Very attractive. This is what you'll see as you're driving north on Livernois towards Square Lake. This is Haldane here. This rendering. This is also the front of the building on Livernois. The applicant is proposing to put in these small patios along the front. I think it would be a really great place to have a morning coffee or read the paper. And this is one of what the internal side is going to look like, the garage side. They're proposing to park. They're going to be able to park 2 cars in the garage and have 2 cars here stacked outside. In terms of impact for the rezoning, again, I want to stress, what's being rezoned is this 1-acre piece to the west. Proposing to change from RT to NN. Under the RT district, there's a density requirement of 5,000 square feet per unit. So with this standard, the applicant could construct 8 units. Now there's no limit under the NN district how many units he could construct, but he's proposing only 9 units. So what he's essentially asking for is 1 additional unit over what's permitted under RT zoning. In terms of height, the maximum height of the existing zoning is 30 feet. Under the NN district, he can go as high as 55. He's voluntarily limiting himself to a 36-foot maximum height. Rear yard setbacks are equal in RT and what's being proposed. And the front yard setback, the minimum is 10 feet on Haldane, where for RT it's 25 feet. As you indicated, Mr. Mayor, this is a neighborhood node. It's node Q, one of 21 nodes in the city. A description of what the goal of this node is listed in the master plan. It is proposed to be nodes the Q node are proposed to be low-intensity uses working in conjunction with one another to form a central neighborhood village, walkable and accessible. That is what the applicant is proposing. Section 1603C lists the standards for rezoning approval. I'm not going to read them all, but one of the standards is consistency with the master plan, which this is consistent, as well as compatibility with adjacent uses of land. And as I indicated, the applicant voluntarily submitted conditions that strengthen the compatibility with adjacent properties. In terms of a recommendation, the Planning Commission held a public hearing on this item, May 23rd, 2017. They recommended approval 7-0, and City Management also recommends approval. With that, Mr. Mayor, I can answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Brent. Any questions for Mr. Savanon from Council? Councilman Henderson.
The only question I had was Haldane is currently dirt road for 20, 30 feet or more.
More.
take, that is going to be repaved?
The portion that abuts this project will be repaved
Okay, so
at the applicant's expense.
There will still be some section of that that is not going to be paved then?
I believe so, Mr. Henderson.
All right. Thanks.
Councilman McCollum?
Yeah, so my one question with regards to this specifically is with regards to parking. So you mentioned that each unit would have its own garage, obviously, and then a driveway for additionally, potentially 2 vehicles. My question, I guess, would be with respect to visitors, is there any kind of consideration or, I guess, policy or regulation, or the term is escaping me, but is there enough parking is, I guess, my main concern?
Yeah, as I indicated, Councilman McCollum, the applicant's proposing to park 2 vehicles in the garage, 2 outside the garage. There's also 15 guest spaces.
Oh, there are, okay.
Yeah, they're located, if you look on the slide here, they're located here, here, and here. And there's no actual standard, like formula for determining what the number of spaces is, but in this instance, the Planning Commission staff feels that this is a appropriate number of spaces.
City Manager Kishnik?
Thank you, Mayor. We just had a correction for Mr. Savanan. He thought he believed, but the whole section of the gravel will be paved. Yeah.
Jim? True?
Could you come to the microphone, please, if...
That's what staff is saying. The gap.
Okay.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Jim Butler, address is 2430 Rochester Court, Suite 100, Troy, Michigan 48083, civil engineering consultant for the project. The plan is to pave, you're correct, currently where the drive on the south side of Haldane is, it stops right where the radius point is. We are going to pave that all the way to our west property line.
Okay. And then is the city going to continue?
And that gets you there, right? And that gets you there.
Yes.
Okay.
Answer the question? Good?
We're good?
Okay.
Councilman Henderson?
If I can just follow up, a little confused still. So if I see the radius, if they pave only to that radius, is there still more dirt road to the west?
It currently dead ends right here. I mean, it stops, the pavement stops. We're going to pave it all the way to here.
All the way to there? Oh, got it, okay.
Okay? Is that clear now?
And is there any dirt beyond that point?
West of there.
It is a gravel road from there on, yes.
Around for how long, and do we have plans to pave that?
Okay, Mr. Van Det.
Yes, thank you. The dirt section of Haldane is just that one little section that you see on the screen. Everything beyond that is paved, asphalt.
Okay, so it will be paved in its
It'll be
entirety?
complete from end to end. This will fill in that missing gap.
Okay.
Okay. That's good news.
That's great news.
Any other questions for Brent? I know there were some questions that were submitted this afternoon. I think you've done a great job of answering those questions. Did the developer...
I had some help, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, I saw that. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I see Craig Chamberlain is signed up to speak on, you wanted to speak on the rain tree, I assume, correct? Yes. Okay. Does anyone in the audience wish to speak on this item this evening that's in the audience?
About rain trees?
No, about this particular public hearing. Seeing none, I will close the public hearing, return it to the table for resolution. Councilman Baker.
I'd like to move E1, conditional rezoning application, file number CRJPCR 2016-004, proposed Tisbury Square Townhomes, formerly known as Livernois Haldane Townhomes, west side of Livernois, south of Square Lake, Section 9, from RT, One Family Attached Residential District, to NNQ, Neighborhood Node Q District, as printed.
Support.
Moved by Councilman Baker, supported by Councilman McCowan, that we approve E1 as printed in the agenda packet. Any further discussion from council? The vote, Ms. Dixon.
Councilmember Abraham?
No.
Councilmember Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Hoderick?
Yes.
Councilmember McCown?
Yes.
Mayor Slater?
Yes. Motion passes. Congratulations. Thank you to the developer for bringing this project to the city. Thank you. Next on the agenda is E2, which is a preliminary site plan review, file number SPJPLN 2017-007, proposed Rain Tree Village on the Park, which is FKA Paradise Park at Rain Tree Village, west of John R. between Big Beaver and Waddles, access provided by stub off North Lake Road, Section 23, currently zoned R1C, which is one family residential district. Once again, Mr. Savanan.
Thank you.
Good evening.
The applicant is Mondrian Properties, and Mondrian submitted a preliminary site plan application for a 59-unit site condominium. In this instance, it's a cluster development. I'll get more into the details of that later on.
Let me open the public hearing, okay?
One more time. There we go. Thanks, Steve. The property is located west of John R., north of Big Beaver. This is a Rain Tree Park to the north. And as you indicated, Mr. Mayor, this property does not front on a mile road. It's got an internal access here provided by North Lake Drive. Zoning of the property is R1C. It's single-family residential. It's single-family residential on all sides. To the south is actually R1D, which is somewhat more dense. To the north, the zoning is CF Community Facilities. This is the second application that was submitted under our recently adopted cluster development provisions. And as you know, Mr. Mayor and City Council, the first step in pursuing cluster development is preparing a parallel plan. What a parallel plan does is it's a drawing that shows the number of lots that could be developed using the traditional zoning requirements. In this instance, this is the plan you see, which is 53 units. 53 units is kind of the magic number, the starting point moving forward. To qualify for a cluster, you have to provide at least 20% open space. In this instance, Mondrian has provided 32% open space, which is a pretty significant percentage of open space. This is the cluster plan that is provided. They were, by providing 32% open space, they were able to earn 6 additional units, or a density bonus of 6 units, bringing the total to 59. And by pursuing the cluster plan, they're also able to gain flexibility in terms of internal setback and using a private road. There's many benefits of clustering besides the 32% open space. The clustering allows development to preserve and protect wetland areas. It provides for a relatively significant landscape buffer around the perimeter. They're able to preserve 2 landmark trees and 175 woodland trees for a total of 177 trees preserved. And they're also able to provide walking paths, not only a connection to Rain Tree Park to the north, but also internal walking paths in the southeast corner of the project. Section 10.04 lists the standards for approval. They're required to meet a number of these, and they have. The retention pond. As you know, details related to stormwater detention are typically not even really addressed until after preliminary site plan approval. We're here tonight for preliminary site plan approval. This is a somewhat unique situation where a single-family residential development is proposing to utilize a private retention pond for their stormwater detention. And residents from the Rain Tree Village Homeowners Association, which owns the pond that's proposed to be used, expressed their concerns related to this situation at the beginning of the process. And there's been an ongoing communication and discussion with residents of Raintree Village since that time, including today. So for these reasons, it's important to explain how stormwater detention has been addressed for this project. So this is the focus of our discussion right here, this retention pond. So I'll try to summarize some findings of fact here so everyone's on the same page. The pond is owned by the Raintree Village Homeowners Association, or the RVHA, and the Raintree Village Homeowners Association is responsible for maintenance of that pond. There's also an Oakland County drain, the Shanahan drain, that flows through that pond. And there's an Oakland County Water Resource Commission easement that provides the authority to utilize that pond for detention by not only Mondrian, but there's 2 other subdivisions that have utilized that pond in the past. The pond was designed and sized to provide regional detention. That's one of the purposes of its existence. And Mondrian has the right to use that pond for detention. Now, a study was conducted on the pond by PEA, and I should note that they are Mondrian's engineer, and that study indicated that there has been minimal maintenance to that pond for over the 40 years of the pond's life. There hasn't been a lot of maintenance that's gone on. That being said, it's in pretty good shape, all things considered, but there are some minor repairs needed, and those repairs are outlined in a report that I attached in the agenda. Won't get into the details. So, moving forward, there's been a lot of dialogue, and there was a meeting at City Hall last week, and there's representatives of Mondrian, the city, the Oakland County Water Resource Commission, and the Raintree Village Homeowners Association. Now we're in this meeting to discuss this. And here's what we came up with moving forward. That Mondrian Homes, the applicant, will pay up to $40,000 for restoration of the pond, and the association members, once it's constructed, will pay matching association dues to Raintree Village to be used for pond maintenance. The city will conduct regular inspections of the inlet and the outlet structures. We haven't been doing that over the last 40 years, but because it's in the best interest of the city that this pond not fail and have negative impacts both downstream and upstream, it's in our best interest to take a role, and we're willing to do that. And the city would make repairs to the inlet and outlet structures as needed. The Oakland County Water Resource Commission would inspect and repair the drain structures outside of the pond area as needed, and they would assist the city with repairs to the inlet and outlet structures as needed. And finally, the Raintree Village Homeowners Association would still be responsible for bank erosion and sedimentation remediation and parks grounds maintenance. And there is a letter that was prepared by the president of the Raintree Village Homeowners Association that was emailed to all of you, and I believe is placed in front of you this evening. I think that summarized what we talked about at that meeting. So, related to the details, Kirk Bovenseep from the DPW is here, and Steve Vendetta is here to answer any technical matters related to detention. But I remind you, we're here this evening for preliminary site plan approval of the 59-unit cluster development. The Planning Commission had a public hearing on April 25th, 2017, and recommended approval 8-0 with some conditions. I could read the conditions if you'd like, but they're all in your packet. And city management agrees with the recommendation of Planning Commission and recommends approval with those same conditions. I can answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Questions? Councilman Baker?
I know this isn't about the pond, but since you opened the door.
As I spent 5 minutes talking about
I think Joe and Mondrian, they've been very cooperative with the Raintree Valley Association, and I've spoken with some from the association, and I've actually walked on the site with them. And I think that it's great that they're willing to do that here, and that the city's involvement has pieced it all together, and it's come to us now. I guess my concern, and this doesn't necessarily apply to this project, but is moving forward, if it's a regional pond and any developer, there are some undeveloped parcels still near there that could potentially use this. What kind of plan does the city have to work with future developers and other developments around the area to get similar terms that would meet with such approval? I mean, I know it's a lot of ifs and out in the future, but it seems to me that this should be part of the policy of the city and how we work with this, and yet I know this came up and it worked, which is great, but do we have any feeling on how we would do that moving forward? Maybe I don't know who's that should be directed to.
I'd like to pull Kurt Bovenseep into this because Kurt has knowledge of the other, there's two somewhat similar situations where there's There are private detention facilities that are owned and maintained by associations. I think Kurt's got more knowledge than I do on those, and he can speak to that better than I can.
So just if you could reiterate your question.
Come on, Kurt.
Just so I can answer it correctly.
Moving forward
please.
with other developments in the area, we've got a great agreement, it seems, from what I've seen and what I've been told by representatives from the association and Mondrian, that they've agreed to provide funds and work with everything to make sure that the city and all of the pieces work together. But it seems like this kind of came by surprise, and we had to piece something together here. Moving forward, is this going to be the framework we use for any other potential developments that want to drain into this regional pond or some of the other ones? Is that your understanding of how it would work?
I'm not familiar with the other parcels that could potentially drain into this pond that are currently undeveloped, but I can speak to the other private detention ponds very similar to what we have here in the Raintree Village, and probably most similar would be the Northfield Commons, which is located at Long Lake and Coolidge. That is a regional detention that drains the condo complex and the two subdivisions to the north, and also has the Rouge River going through that detention with an easement as well. We do some maintenance to the outlets and inlets there as well. So I think that this gave us an opportunity to relook at that easement agreement and kind of redefine whose responsibility is what. And I think, to completely answer your question, I think we will use this as framework to look at those private detention ponds and see that some of these private owners don't have the ability to maintain the pond, and that the city has an interest to protect both upstream and downstream in the respects to the inlets and outlets, but not necessarily the aesthetics of the pond, as long as it's functioning properly.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Kurt. I have to get permission.
Fast.
Councilman Henderson.
Can I further drill in on that? The question came up specifically, and I think this is kind of where Councilman Baker is moving towards. There are two specific properties between 16 and 17 and Rochester and John R. that are prime for redevelopment and potentially will drain into that same pond or the Shanahan drain. Is it our policy, or will it be our policy in the future, that as a developer comes and purchases one of those, that we would discuss the fact that they're going to drain into that pond, and that they may want their developments to also coexist with the Raintree Village Homeowners Association and contribute to costs? Is that more specific or not more specific?
I want to make sure, are we talking about the property just north of Troy Sports Center? Is that the undeveloped parcel?
No, I think it's actually, I'm not sure if it's on this map or not. Let me look at it for a second. No, I'm not sure if it's on this map or not. So it's going to be more of a generic question for you.
Okay.
Let's just pretend there's a piece of property up there and somebody comes and buys it and wants to develop.
Understood. So the drain district, the Shanahan Drain District, you can, if they built on-site detention, it would drain if it was upstream of the current Raintree Village detention. It could drain into the Shanahan drain and then flow through that pond. Acting as detention, we would have to look at the capacity and the size of the development to determine if it was truly designed to take on that additional capacity. Without specifics of, you know, how many, what's going to be discharged into the pond, it's difficult to answer, right? So it's, at this point, it's a case by case.
Right. So follow up with that?
Sure.
So the question being, though, is it our policy, or will it be our policy to have that? Let's backtrack to about March 31st, when I got an email from somebody that was formerly involved in their homeowners association, and she developed a lot of questions about the agreement that they have with their homeowners and maintenance of that pond. Where that project was already well underway, it just seems to be a real cumbersome situation to try to negotiate that after the fact. Are we going to, in the future, maybe bring that idea up to future developments in that square mile, that there may be a possibility that they have to coordinate with that homeowners association, or is that not something that we as a city would get involved with?
Absolutely. I think we would coordinate, just as we did with this development, knowing that this was an issue that previous city managers gave opinions on the pond itself and the ownership and the maintenance responsibilities, that we knew going into this process, talking to the developer and communicating with the Raintree Village Homeowners Association right when the process started. So if a development were to come, we'd absolutely tell them that here's the situation if you want to use the regional pond, that we would start those communications very early.
Very good. Thank you.
Good questions from council for staff? Once again, I know there were some questions that were asked earlier today that apparently have been answered. Thank you. I see Craig Chamberlain is signed up to speak on this item. If you'd like to come forward. Troy resident, good evening.
Yes, Troy resident, president of the Raintree Village Homeowners Association. Honorable Mayor and council members, you've seen the RVHA letter of intent, which states that RVHA does not oppose the development of Raintree Village on the park. In that same document, I'd like to draw your attention to the last sentence, which reads, RVHA requests proactive notification from the city of Troy at the onset of any future project that will discharge stormwater to the pond in Lakeside Park. A memo from RVHA to the City of Troy dated March 13th, which is in the agenda packet, said that RVHA is interested in working with Oakland County Water Resources Commissioner, the City of Troy, and Mondrian Properties to establish a joint maintenance agreement. In the announcement in the June 19th agenda, it was evident that the city had negotiated pond maintenance with Mondrian Properties without including RVHA. The city can't both hold the position that RVHA is solely responsible for pond maintenance and negotiate pond maintenance. That was the impetus for the June 29th meeting, which served as the basis for RVHA's letter of intent. Another concern is that the city is not treating all homeowners equally. RVHA is solely responsible for bank restoration and eventual sedimentation remediation removal for a 5-acre detention pond that serves a drainage district of 525 acres. Raintree Village homeowners, with matching contributions from future Raintree Village on the Park homeowners, pay for the maintenance. Other properties benefit from the pond but do not pay anything for it. RVHA does not have the power to assess those other users. I appreciate that the city does not want to assume responsibility for the bank restoration and sedimentation remediation because, to be fair, they'd have to do the same for other locations in Troy. But it really is a burden for this homeowners association that is already challenged in finding volunteers willing to serve on its board. RVHA's current budget can handle the grounds maintenance that it has been doing, but it will take many years to raise the funds to do bank restoration. Of course, we'd prefer that a detention pond that is being used as a regional resource be maintained by a regional authority, not a volunteer-run homeowners association. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes those that have signed up to speak on this item. Is there someone in the audience that wishes to speak on this item? Please come forward and give us your name, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. My name is Gloria Nastis. I live at 1606 Woodgate Drive. You have my comments that I sent to the Planning Commission before the Planning Commission meeting, but at that meeting I found out some new information, such as the fact that Mr. Savant said that the cluster zoning regulations allow for 53 properties, but they're being allowed to do 6 more houses. There's also going to be some setback that's not going to meet the regulations that are required in the zoning, as well as the fact that there are close to 500 trees on that property, and if you read the publications and the documentation, they're going to cut out 300 trees, and I'd sure like to know what's going to be disappearing, because they're only going to retain about 1/3 of the trees that are on the property now. And other properties they've developed east of John R. were pretty much a clear cut, and I'm fearful that that's going to happen. We're going to displace wildlife. You're going to have issues with stormwater retention and the wetlands that do that aquifer infiltration that are allowed. And we are also concerned, what's it going to do to the infrastructure for our property? The water mains, the sewer lines that we use, I'm sure they'll be tying into there, and it's going to affect our infrastructure. So That's what I wanted to say, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience that wishes to speak on this item this evening? Hearing none, I will close this public hearing, return it to the table for resolution. Councilman Baker.
I'd like to move E2, preliminary site plan review, file number SPJPLN 2017-007, proposed Raintree Village on the park, formerly known as Paradise Park at Raintree Village, west of John R. between Big Beaver and Waddles, access provided by stub off North Lake Road, Section 23, currently zoned R1C, one family residential district.
Support.
As printed.
Support.
Moved by Councilman Baker, supported by Councilman McCowan, that we approve E2 as printed in the agenda packet this evening. Further discussion. Mayor Pro Tem Hoderick.
Just for collective educational purposes, we're calling this preliminary site plan review. The next step of this process, those next steps, what do those look like so that we have a collective understanding?
Following preliminary site plan approval, the next step would be for Mondrian's engineers to actually do design, technical design, and seek final site plan approval. Final site plan approval is administrative. Once the applicant gets final site plan approval, they can seek building permits,
And
start construction.
final site plan approval comes to?
Ultimately, the planning director signs the checklist, but the majority of the review is done by engineering. It's mostly engineering review.
And that's where infrastructure, we share infrastructure concerns and considerations, and our tree ordinance we're looking to protect and not clear cut like what had happened, and we have that now. All of that gets comprehended in that process of dotting the i's, crossing the t's, and looking for potential issues, correct?
Yes, and an important document that the city attorney will review is the conservation language. We treat, Troy treats a site plan like a contract. The applicant's proposing to save 175 woodland trees and two landmark trees. He's required by contract to do that. They cannot be eliminated. So any concerns about about Mondrian doing the switcheroo and getting approval for maintaining trees, but then clear cutting, it's not permitted. And that there'd be documentation that lays out the requirements of the conservation easement in terms of what can be removed, what can't be removed, what type of maintenance can be done, brush hogging, that type of thing. That'll all be outlined in that document.
Councilman Henderson.
Can you pull up the one slide that shows the 59 sites in the one section, I think in the southeast corner? No. It actually has the number 59 on it. 59 units. Okay, so I want to just make a clarification here. In the cluster ordinance, we allow more housing because of a bonus that they've achieved due to the fact that they're preserving that entire southeast section.
Yeah.
As well. I want to clarify that.
Councilman Henderson, there's a formula. Basically, to qualify for the cluster, you have to preserve 20% open space, and by doing so, the applicant gets a 20% density bonus. In this instance, they're entitled to 11 units. They're actually only seeking 6 additional units. They could do more, but this is the type of product that the applicant wanted to do. So the parallel plan that the resident, I apologize, I forget her name. The parallel plan was a starting point, 53 units. The applicant earned 6 additional units through the cluster plan.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, Brent. Any further discussion? Mayor Pro Tem Hoderick.
Thank you, Mayor. The bank restoration questions that are being brought up, both for this particular basin and potentially others out there, Mr. Chamberlain, I met with him and walked the property as well, and that board and that association are doing God's work there in terms of really making sure that things are right. And the bylaws even prevent the fundraising at the speed at which it should maybe happen to do this kind of remediation. So this is really separate from what we vote on this. But I think what this has done is surfaced a question for the city overall and the other areas where there's bank restoration, perhaps needs and plans, and the city manager's nodding at me. If we can have a consensus that to be fair, that we look at them, understand them, and I would suggest that's maybe something from an infrastructure, safety, wellness of the city factor that we should be looking at. I don't mean to open Pandora's box either, and I don't think this association meant to do that either, but as this city has built out and what was one small neighborhood became 5 and a park that's feeding into this, that's probably happening in other places. In fairness and in the spirit of sustainability and quality work, could we be looking at that?
I agree.
Okay.
I agree. Any other further discussion? The vote, Ms. Dixon?
Councilmember Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Hoderick?
Yes.
Councilmember McCown?
Yes.
Mayor Slater?
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Motion passes. Congratulations. Next on the agenda is public comment for items on the agenda from Troy residents and businesses. I don't see that anyone has signed up for that this evening. There are no postponed items, so we will move to regular business. There are no board and committee appointments from the mayor or city council. I-2 are mayoral nominations and city council nominations. There are none this evening. So we will move to I-3, which is a request for closed session. Somebody like to move that resolution? Councilman Baker.
I'd like to move I-3, closed session, resolved that Troy City Council shall meet in closed session on July 10, 2017 in the council boardroom pursuant to MCL 15.268H, MCL 15.243G.
Support.
Moved by Councilman Baker, supported by Councilman McCown, that we approve I-3, which is a closed session request as indicated. Discussion? The vote, Ms. Dixon.
Councilmember Henderson?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Hoderick?
Yes.
Councilmember McCown?
Yes.
Mayor Slater?
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Councilmember Baker?
Yes.
Motion passes. Next is the consent agenda. Does any city council member wish to pull? Councilman Henderson.
I'd like to move all items on the consent agenda as printed.
Support.
Moved by Councilman Henderson, supported by Councilwoman Abraham, that we approve all items on the consent agenda as presented in the agenda packet. Discussion? The vote, Ms. Dixon.
Mayor Pro Tem Hoderick?
Yes.
Councilmember McCown?
Yes.
Mayor Slater?
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Councilmember Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson?
Yes.
Motion passes. If you're here on a consent agenda item, they've all been approved this evening. Next are memorandums and future council agenda items. K1A is an announcement of a public hearing for July 24th, 2017, which is an adoption of the Brownfield Redevelopment Plan number 7 for Regency at Troy, 2785 West Maple Road, south of Maple, east of Coolidge, section 32. There are no council memorandums this evening, so we will move to public comment for items on the agenda from Troy residents and businesses. I see we have a number of residents wish to speak this evening on this item. Please be aware that there is a 3-minute maximum time. The green light will appear when your 3 minutes starts. The yellow light will indicate you have 1 minute remaining. Please start to wrap up when you see the yellow light. First, I'll call on James Savage, Troy resident. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, council, staff. At the last meeting, I voiced my concerns regarding the city centre plan, and tonight I have a few more thoughts on that. Over the years, I have seen many big developments proposed, and many of them have failed. Most of those developments were initiated not by residents or resident groups, but by developers or promoters whose bottom line is making money. Now, I am not knocking developers or their agents. If I were a developer or an agent, I would probably be doing the same thing. But as a resident who has attended city meetings for over 20 years, I sometimes get the feeling that our community is being controlled by these outside forces. Over 12 years ago, a task force was formed to develop a plan for a city center site. I was not a member of that task force. That plan was initiated by members of our community. The task force was made up from all segments of the community. It was authorized unanimously by the City Council. The plan was developed by the community, and when it was presented to City Council, it received overwhelming praise and support. This was a plan for a Troy Civic Center site by the community, of the community, and for the community. But what happened? I waited, hoping to take my grandson skating on the pond that was proposed. Then came the summer. No pond to sail model boats, as I did as a kid. I asked questions. What happened to the plan? No answers. I ask you now, what happened to that plan? Did a former council kill it? Was it just forgotten or abandoned? Or was it just trashed? Is this what happens to proposals that come from the community? As a community, do we have to have outside experts tell us what we want? This was a plan that came from the community, and I don't know what happened to it. I waited, I saw a few sidewalks go in, and then we came with a totally new plan, and I'm still wondering what happened to the old one. I hope you check it out. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Savage. Next, I'll call on Diane Cipoletti, Troy resident. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council members.
Please bring the microphone down a little bit. Thank you.
My husband and I have been residents on McManus Drive for 17 years. We love the city of Troy and appreciate the opportunity you give to us to express our views and concerns. I am a petition circulator in order to put the question of the urban plan for the Civic Center on the ballot. Much to my pleasant surprise, I have had many people from many ethnic backgrounds and many age groups, ranging from millennials to middle age to seniors, sign the petition to keep our Civic Center in a park-like setting as opposed to a commercial development. My husband and I encourage the council to put this issue to a vote of the residents. Thank you very much.
Thank you. David Ashland, Troy resident.
Good evening, Mayor and Council.
Good evening.
I feel like I might be playing part of a record you've already heard, but nonetheless, I want to make my case because there will be some new thoughts. 5 of the 10, number 5 of the 10 2017 Troy strategies is select a master developer for the development of the Troy Town Center Master Plan. You fulfilled that. Troy selected the Gibbs Planning Group, a master developer who focused on a large-scale commercial plan. We are about to engage and educate the community on this plan in 8 sessions, beginning tomorrow July 11th. Alternative master plans, including one that would maintain the present campus green environment, which should also be considered. The presently proposed commercial development on the campus is at one end of the range of possible development options. Maintaining the green space is at the other end of that range. In February of 2004, as previously mentioned, a Civic Center Priority Task Force authorized by City Council and including community participants representing many city departments, provided City Council with a proposed evolutionary plan that over time would develop a park and campus setting and maintain the green space. The 2004 plan, of course, is 13 years old. It is only conceptual and would need updating. However, the basic concept is well worth considering. I propose that time be allocated in each of the 8 upcoming sessions for presentation of the concepts of this 2000 plan, and that the public be engaged in a discussion of this green space alternative. This would be in addition to presenting the proposed large-scale alternative. So I ask, would City Administration please make time available in the 8 sessions, starting tomorrow, for review of the ideas included in the 2004 plan? Not the plan, but the ideas of this plan to maintain this space. We need to carefully look at options before we spend a large amount of money. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Brian Waddles, Troy resident.
Good evening, Mayor and Council.
Good evening, Mr. Waddles.
31-year resident of Troy, and that's a perfect lead-in to why I'm here, because I was the chairman of this Troy's Priority Task Force, the Civic Center Priority Task Force in 2003 and 2004. It was enabled by this board. It was composed of 13 members representing all the boards of the city, plus the president of the Chamber of Commerce, Michelle Hodges at the time, and a representative of the DDA, so that we had the business side represented, not just green tree huggers. People think all we're doing is hugging trees. So we had the business side well represented. In fact, Michelle was our vice chairman of the board. We met for 6 months. We prepared a report that was submitted to council. As the previous speaker said, it was almost universally accepted as great. At the same time, there was a debate going on about a convention center, conference center, whatever. A public vote was scheduled for that particular development because it was on parkland. That had to go to a public vote. Our task was to ignore that portion of the property, focus on the public spaces. When that vote turned down the conference center, we were then tasked with reviewing those 11 acres and adding them into our plan. Some of the elements actually have been developed. Mr. Savage may not have recognized all of them that actually did get done. One of the elements was the park that now exists, the picnic area next to the skate park. That was part of our plan. The asphalt walking paths, that was our number one thing, have walkability throughout the Civic Center. The walking paths have been developed. Fix up the water features so that there was native plants and things like that, which they've done. We were promoting a winter sports area. We didn't get the ice skating rink, but we did get a sled hill. In fact, when I Googled sled hills in Detroit last year, the Troy Aquatic Center came up as the #1 hit for sledding hills, believe it or not. So we did get part of our winter sports activity area. Another part of it was programming. Michelle Hodges, the chamber president, wanted programming. We got Troy Days last few years, the kind of programming we're talking about. We also emphasized ethnic festivals because of the ethnic nature of Troy. Something to utilize the site, not just be green grass and trees. So for your benefit, since it's come up a couple of times in the press and here tonight, if you wish, since it's no longer available on the city website, I've brought copies of our report for each of you, and you can pass them around.
Give it to the clerk, please.
There's a big slideshow that goes with it. If anybody's interested in that, I can provide that to you in an email or something like that. Now, representing myself personally about the Civic Center, okay, I'm not speaking on behalf of the task force that's done 13 years ago. I'm opposed to it. I'm a neighbor of it. I live a third of a mile north of the Civic Center. I'm very concerned about it. Am I done?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay. For another time.
Yes, sir. You're welcome back anytime. Cynthia Wilshire, Troy resident.
Good evening, all. I haven't seen you guys in a long time because you've been doing a good job, but we have a little problem here. I've been a resident of this city for over 60 years. And according to the Somerset Gazette, over a year ago, a public gathering explained ideas, hired Bob Gibbs to develop the plan, took it to the Planning Commission, and they unanimously approved it. And then it came to you people, and you unanimously approved it. And then in December, all of a sudden, you're off to New York looking for people that are interested in this without ever asking any of the residents, is this what you want? It was just like, bam. There was no outcry from the public until Mr. Savage brought this to your attention at the last council meeting. Wow, bless Mr. Savage. Very little publicity about this, and then all of a sudden, it's like a done deal. Where was the advisory board or a vote by the citizens or even a discussion of this? Now it's exploded on the front page of the Detroit News. I woke up at 6:15 in the morning and found it on my local news channel on Channel 2. And then it was on the radio. It was just all over the place, all of a sudden. The city wants to keep millennials. Did you know that there was a government study done and only 20% of the millennials are employed at this point in time with any kind of a job? So I want to know, if they're moving these apartments, who's going to pay the bills? Mom and Dad? What about the 398-unit Millennial Place apartments that are on the planning board's page to look at for, it's coming up for approval, I presume, that will be put behind the MJR Theater. That's a good place for that. We need to clean up that area. I've been trying to get a Hobby Lobby in there, and they aren't biting. Not enough traffic. So we're waiting for that to happen, and that's private money. That's not using our $53 million. People have come to Troy because they came here because of our schools and our parks and our recreation and our wonderful diversity. Seniors mentioned about living here in the city property. We don't even have a senior center. Look around at all the communities surrounding us. They have gorgeous senior centers, and we're stuck on what we call not the community center, but the Troy Business Center, because it's rented out to more than just senior users.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Wilson.
Thank you.
Jerry Bloom, Troy resident. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I rise also in opposition to the commercial development of our beautiful Civic Center campus in Parkland. Back in 2004, approximately, the city voted 8-2 to keep that land green, and I support those that voted for that. I wonder why the city wants to go into competition with private developers who are trying to develop a very similar use for the former Kmart headquarters property. Why do we want to compete with private developers when we need to replace that Kmart eyesore? It makes no sense to me. The city residents have voted over and over to keep the Civic Center green. They're not interested in it being commercially developed. They enjoy coming to the library, enjoying the green space. They enjoy coming to City Hall. So that's my position, and I hope you, if you go ahead, I hope you at least put a vote to the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Aaron Green, Troy resident. Good evening.
Good evening, Council. Half a decade I've been here. I don't think it really matters. I live in Troy now. I am speaking on two fronts. I didn't expect there to be so much to talk about. The first that I want to speak on is actually fireworks. The state of Michigan several years ago changed the law to allow non-commercial to consumer-grade fireworks to be shot off in the state the day before and the day after, up until midnight, broadly, although it could be regulated by municipalities. As an avid fireworks shooter at one point in my life, and I would happily be again had I the disposable income, I still obeyed the law and never shot it off in a highly populated, densely populated residential area. I am an animal lover. I know many vets, and as somebody who knows many people with dogs, who has several cats, the general consensus among owners is that it's awful for their pets. The general consensus among residents is that it's very disruptive and that it keeps people awake at all hours. Even though broadly it does end at midnight, that is not by any means entirely true. And even that, at 11:30 at night, shooting off fireworks is ridiculous in the middle of a suburb. And it is the single largest day of the year when pets run away. Dogs are scared out of their minds and run off. And it's deeply disruptive. I think that whether, I know there's something being proposed right now, there's a petition being circulated to rescind the previous change in the Michigan state law. I think that Troy should examine an ordinance that restricts it as much as possible, possibly to a controlled area, away from more populated areas, in a park supervised by police and fire, something along those lines. But broadly to get it out of the suburbs and out of the residentially controlled areas. In the remaining 30 seconds that I have, I would like to say that as a young, hip individual, I am broadly in support of this new city plan. I have a friend who runs a rather well-regarded blog on urban development, and the zoning that has prevented this until now is actually part of the problem. That the idea that we could have a mixed-use space to actually have a downtown is a wonderful thing. I love green space, but this is a good use of space.
Thank you, Mr. Green. Jim Werpatinsky, Troy resident. Good to see you, Jim.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, City staff. A couple weeks ago, I sent an email to Council and to City Manager, and I happened to share it with some other folks, and it kind of resonated with them, and they asked that maybe I read it tonight to reinforce it and for the viewing audience. So I'll read most of it here. The proposed plan to develop the Civic Center property needs to be further fleshed out, and the community engagement sessions need to be held. You do have 8 of those scheduled now, which is good. This may well be a viable plan. However, the opportunities for the Civic Center property are endless. Consider an alternative where the property remains public and the green space is preserved. Not all development needs to be commercialized. There's intrinsic value in preserving some land for the public to maintain a high quality of life for the whole community. Build a new library and make it the center of the new universe. Show the world Troy's commitment to lifelong learning and education with a massive world-class library that caters to all segments of society and will continue to attract millennials and desired types of business to the city. Utilize all the public aspects of the plan, make it a walkable center with a 5-acre lake and the other proposed public amenities, include the 1-acre square with a large fountain that could accommodate community events, a farmer's market, which we could really use, or fairs. And finally, create the Veterans Park outside of City Hall in a prominent location to pay proper homage to our wonderful veterans. Also, nobody wants the trails and parkways in their backyard. Everybody supposedly wants them in their backyard. So why don't we then populate the Civic Center with pathways and trails and have them go to specific places? Maybe have a mini art gallery, have a place where painters actually paint into a pathway into a kid's play area, maybe into a place for meditation, and maybe one for this skating park, this outdoor ice skating park, which we've talked about for a millennium. I think that would be wonderful. Now, with the spiffed up Civic Center like that, we could then have a parade like some of the other communities and go through Civic Center and Town Center and everything and show off our spiffy thing. So anyway, I ask you to put it on the ballot and let the people vote on it. And a couple of other extraneous things. I noticed in the Detroit Free Press, Birmingham now is having trouble filling their first floor retail downtown and stuff because, you know, the paradigm has changed with Amazon, Walmart, the internet and stuff. Retail is not what it used to be.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
Gene Stein, Troy resident.
Good evening, Mayor Slater, City
Good evening,
Council.
Mayor Stein.
My name is Jean Stein, and I am a 55-year resident of Troy. Excuse me. Yesterday, I was really pleasantly surprised when I received a phone call from City Manager Brian Kishnick. He told me that as far as the urban plan for the Civic Center was concerned, he wanted me to know that he only wants to do what the residents want. And he also assured me that the City Council felt the same way, to do what the residents want. And if that's the case, and I'm sure it is, since that's what Brian told me, you, the City Council, will probably want to put the question on the ballot yourselves. That would certainly be a compelling picture showing the people that you do want to do what the majority of the residents of Troy want for their Civic Center. Thank you.
Thank you. Aaron Ladd, Troy resident. Good evening.
My name's Aaron. I live in Troy. I'm a bicycle commuter. I'm an amateur web developer. I'm also a participating member on the Troy Trails and Pathway Committee, along with Kurt Vincent. I've been focused on it for about a decade, kind of looking forward to how the city will develop its trail network. And so I've been wondering why it's been taking so long. So I'm putting together a web community, an online community for Troy residents, local businesses, politicians, grassroots community that focuses on developing the trails, maintaining them, affording a world-class trails community in the city. And one of the things I came across while putting it together is that Michael Bloomberg is hosting a $200 million mayor's challenge that focuses on modernizing transit developments, improving health, and reducing driving. I myself am putting together a grant proposal for the website that I'm putting together. And for instance, this is what I put together so far. It's just a first draft. The Troy Trails and Pathways Community Portal, located online at www.troytrails.community. The Troy Trails online community portal is designed to function as an online social networking solution for the city's trails and pathways network. Currently, the site is set up so that the Troy Trails and Pathways Committee can collaborate online in a public open setting. The site highlights the city's trails developments as they happen. It focuses on developments and information and it's designed to capture the public's imagination and hopefully forward a world-class trails community in the city of Troy. I hope you will join me in the effort to forward a more prosperous and people-friendly city. Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. That concludes those that have signed up to speak this evening. Any city council, city administration response to Councilman Baker?
Can we start with the fireworks question? It's my understanding that the City of Troy's ordinance is as restrictive as it can be under the state law. Is that correct, City Attorney?
Yes, that is correct. We have revisited that. We have been very closely monitoring the state law and the bills that have been introduced, but at this point in time, the city has as restrictive of an ordinance that we can have under the new state law.
To you, Mr. Green, sorry. I guess I'll take if I can continue since I'm here.
Sure.
It's very interesting hearing everyone's comments tonight about the Civic Center. A couple quick things before I even share any further thoughts is, I think it was Ms. Wilshire stated that she read in the paper that we unanimously approved it, the Planning Commission's unanimously approved it. That's not true. What we've unanimously approved, if you want to use those words, is a consensus to continue moving forward to explore it and to look at it and see if it's viable for our city, see if it's what the residents want. And see if there's developers even interested. But we have not approved this plan as it is. We have no plans to break ground. We're exploring. I mean, we're way further back than what some of the things I've heard. So, you quoted the newspaper, the Gazette. I read that as well, and I was a little surprised to read it. But it's, there's nothing said at this point. We are looking at things and having our community engagement sessions, which I think Councilman Henderson might read the dates later. He's got the sheet, but there are 8 of them coming up. So I think that's important to point out. I'm always interested in hearing what people say when they come up and speak to the microphone versus what we see on Facebook or on Nextdoor or what's being said outside of the library. And I have to say, if the information that was being said here tonight is what's being said when you're giving out fact sheets for your petition gathering, it's a much different ballgame. And I am dismayed to see what's called a fact sheet with things that aren't true. And we don't have the means to go out there and counteract what's being put out there. So we have this opportunity to speak for a few minutes and hope someone's watching at home and hope we don't offend our friends who are sitting out in the audience, because some of you are my friends and some of you are involved in this petition gathering. And, I understand why you're concerned and why you want to make sure that the people have a say. And of course, we all do. I do, and I'm sure everyone else does. That's why we do this. We're not doing it for our own edification. But it does bother me when I see flyers and pictures of things that are not accurate representations of what the potential plan is, have bullet points that are just not true, and that's what's being used to gather signatures. I recognize you can't stand out in front of the library and speak for 3 minutes and give your heartfelt emotional opinions, which are all extremely valuable and important pieces of this, to get a signature, and you're limited in time. But it's frustrating, and I hope that continuing forward, someone at least thinks about that and maybe says, well, you know, there is another side to this. And I hope that those of you who are so adamantly opposed and giving incorrect facts are going to come to some community engagement sessions to learn what's really happening. And it may very well turn out that this project doesn't move forward, and that's fine. That's what the community engagement sessions are for. They're for education, they're for gathering input. You know, we've invested some money so far to have these plans drawn up and to look at the viability, but we have not approved these plans to be built. Nobody's breaking ground, like I said. There are definite concerns that even those of us who have agreed to have it move forward to look at have expressed. I have questions about this project as it stands, and I haven't been shy about asking them. When we had our joint study session with the Planning Commission, we asked questions about, you know, the infrastructure costs. Why are we fronting all these costs? How can we be sure that we're going to get this investment back? We spoke at length about community engagement and involvement. I can't remember what month that was, but I'm glad to see we're scheduling those now. So we are asking the questions, and I'm thankful Mr. Savage came 3 weeks ago and brought this up. I met with some of you since then and said, you know, until Mr. Savage came to the mic, we hadn't heard any opposition. And, you know, I can't say I'm happy to hear opposition, but I'm happy to hear differing viewpoints, because that is what we're about in the city. And I have no interest in ramming any project down anybody's throat if the city doesn't want it. But that said, we are elected to look at projects and look at what might be the best for the future of the city. And many of us feel, or at least have felt in the past on the record, that this particular plan looks promising for our city and might be what we need as we move forward in the decades ahead. So I ask that you come to the community engagement sessions and learn more about the project, ask questions. I can't come to all of them, but I'm going to try to be at some of them. I'm happy to talk to you in person there. Email me or call me anytime. Happy to share my thoughts, and I guess that's it.
Thank you. Councilwoman Abraham.
This is a question for City Manager Kizchnik. I've heard references when I was at the Historical Village yesterday afternoon that these community engagement sessions would be more of a sales pitch. So could you outline what the format of these community engagement sessions are going to be? Will community members have a chance to provide their input and will it be give and take, or is it more of a listen and learn?
Yeah, so it's not a presentation, whether it's the library or the community center. We will set up in the lobby of both and stand there with plans, with information, and if people have questions, we'll answer. If people just want us to tell them what it says, we'll do that. Then we have note cards for people to give their feedback. Based on probably 7 comments, I'll have the 2004 plan there that we've, Mark Miller's looked at and we've looked at. So the format is more interactive than one-way selling how great this is. It's just, this is what goes in this block as a concept right now. I hope that helps.
And then one more follow-up question. You've heard references to this being a done deal or approved, and Councilman Baker has done a nice job of articulating it as more of approval of exploration. Part of the process was going out in December to understand if there were even interest in this project by developers at their national convention. I think it was in New York. As part of that process, where we did get feedback that this is a promising thing, would be the RFPs. Can you talk a little bit of where we are with the RFP process?
Right, so the final touches are being put on an RFQ, request for qualifications, and that's to send out to see if a master developer, and Mr. Savage, let's just clear this up. Mr. Savage said at the beginning, we've hired a master developer, Bob Gibbs. That's not true. Bob Gibbs is the planner, the urbanist, the architect who put a concept together. A master developer has not been determined, and that's what the RFQ will do to see who's out there. We'll review those qualification proposals and see if they have the resources, see if it makes sense, and then stop at that point, because this council and the Planning Commission has always said, take the next step. not go do the project. It's always been take the next step. And so the next step is putting out an RFQ this week.
And one last part of that RFQ will really flesh out what the financials of this project is, what it would cost, what the city might earn, what capital outlay there may be. So I want to caution those that may have gotten the fact sheet where there's a $53 million number on it. That number is not substantiated. We won't know the financials until the RFQ comes back. And when the RFQ comes back, we may collectively look at this and say, this isn't right for us. We may hear from our residents that this isn't the right project for us, or the things that we've asked for are not incorporated in there. There are a lot of ifs going on right now. So I hope people will show up to these engagement sessions in July. I hope that they're so wildly successful that we have to have additional sessions in August like we had talked about potentially. It's still very early on in the process. I don't want residents to feel like they're being ignored or not included. We're still very far away from anything happening. And frankly, one of the things that could happen is this is a great project, but we're not ready to do this maybe in a few years. That is another possible outcome. So please do not feel this is a done deal.
Councilman Henderson.
Before I read all the dates and times for the engagement sessions, just, you know, everybody, some of us played it a lot longer ago than others, but have all played that game, telephone or operator or what. So one person tells somebody something and then on down the line until at the end, it becomes something that it's completely not. Well, you know, I get a sense that that's kind of where we're at with this Civic Center project. Mr. Werpetinsky hit on almost all of the topics that we have included in that Civic Center project. And I don't know if you've attended some of those study sessions that we've had on it, but it includes most of what you outlined. There's some great things. There's some things that, you know, maybe I personally don't like and maybe Mayor Slater loves, and vice versa. This is a very fluid project. It's not, nothing is etched in stone like bulldozing the aquatic center, which is something I heard over the weekend. Some of that stuff is just not true. And so I urge everybody that's got any kind of interest in this project whatsoever, positive or negative, to come to one of these sessions and get firsthand knowledge of what is being proposed here and what we're pursuing. And if you don't do that, at least refrain from telling stories that you just don't know or haven't confirmed are true. So that said, there's going to be 2 different locations for these engagement sessions. I'll read the ones that are happening at the Troy Public Library, July 11th and July 18th, 1:30 to 3:30 p.m., July 15th from noon to 2, and July 25th from 1:30 to 3:30, and that's all at the Troy Public Library. Then there's going to be evening sessions for those of us that work and can't make the day sessions at the Troy Community Center, July 12th, 19th, and 26th from 6 to 7 p.m., and July 22nd from 10 to noon, so that's another daytime opportunity. So I encourage all of you, anybody, come and attend these sessions. I'm going to try and make as many as I can because I think it's a great project. I don't know if we can promote it from up here, but I just think it's a good project. Maybe need some tweaks, and we'll see how that goes as we move forward with this thing, if we move forward.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Hoderick.
You knew before even looking at me, yes.
I'm sorry, I thought you wanted to speak.
He assumed I would want to talk. And you're correct.
You told me you did.
Yeah, I know, but it was funny.
You want to wait till council comments?
No, I do. Mr. Werpetinsky, that's exactly what's in the idea phase that we're doing right now. This is not a project where the train has left the station. Those that work in the auto industry, when I worked at General Motors, they had a 4-phase product development process that they followed. The pre-phase was called Bubble Up. And this is where concept cars or concept, and Councilwoman Abraham can slap me upside the head if I'm not remembering this correctly, where you dream and there's an ideation phase. It's where the design staff kicks around ideas and where new ideas come to be. And it's the job to do that. Does every idea end up getting fleshed out and make it past each phase? No. As it goes along and it gets brought to the approving bodies, it's some products, some that were really great dreams that seemed like fun, if there wasn't a good business case, those products would not move forward. And they had to pass certain tests. So I understand that that Detroit News article and the television news story made people think that this is a done deal. What that story was really about is look at the city of Troy, trying to look at its fiduciary responsibility to its residents, its most beautiful gem of a property, the Civic Center, and what the potentials might be. And I would dare say that we would be grossly irresponsible if we weren't looking at this point in time. We have a region that is reevaluating itself. The city of Detroit is completely refreshing itself. Pontiac is coming back. We should be looking at ourselves to say, okay, here we are at this juncture. What should we be doing or not doing going forward? Part of the reason this whole conversation even started is this building is old and does not serve our residents adequately. The Aquatic Center is aging and is going to need an infusion of dollars. Our library, the leaky roofs that we remediate, I mean, we are throwing good money after bad with these buildings. We could decide to just tap into our capital funds and refresh and rebuild. That's one idea. One of the ideas that came up is, boy, we have a valuable place here. This is one of the most amazing pieces of property in the state, if not the nation. Is there a possibility of private-public partnership that we retain our Civic Center? We end out with a lake that we can ice skate on, proposed in it. We end out with some opportunities for green space, walkable, livable. We're not talking about strip malls in here. We're at this idea phase, and these engagement sessions are inviting the community to be a part of it. What we need as a council and a planning commission and a city staff that has a responsibility to look at this is for the community to help us do it constructively. And if I can be candid, I was extremely upset to see the misinformation on the petition fact sheet that's going around. And I'm deeply concerned when we start talking about altering our charter. We lived that nightmare in this community already with the millage cap. We saw what that millage cap did to us. It seemed like a great idea on paper. Then we hit a downturn, and the ugly discourse that happened after that is we had to make difficult decisions as a community. That's not a place I want to go back to. When we're talking about changing our charter, that's serious, and we need to be very careful. And boy, we shouldn't jam that down the residents' throats either. Our state government is deeply handcuffed by constitutionally tied funds that we say, oh, the money is there. They can't move that money because the Constitution prevents it. When we change our charter, which might make sense for right now if there's a huge groundswell of people who want to kill this idea, 10 years from now, when this city is in another place, what have we done to the decision-making bodies in that process when we make it so difficult? I've actually had people say to me, well, go back and get the millage cap taken out. Do you know how much work that would be? And the fighting that goes on. So I ask those that are involved, you know, I see the address on the petition. I see it tying back to Hauerlich's. I see State Rep Hauerlich here. Mayor Jean Stein, you know I love you like you're a mentor, you're my godmother. I want to ask you personally, I can't speak for the entire council, think this through carefully. Look at this body. Look at your planning commission. Look at the processes that are in place. Look at the residents that become very involved. Know that we also hear from a pile of people who are really charged up about exploring this. And really, really think through. Of course, it's your right to do this and to put that on the ballot. But be careful what we set in motion for those that come behind us. And be careful about killing an idea that is still deserves a chance to get bantered around before it gets killed. Let's finesse it. Let's make it right for us. And the truth is, the RFQ could go out and we won't have a private developer. The dream will die because it's just not there. Let's not create an environment, though, that precludes a developer from coming to us. Let's not create a stink around this idea that makes somebody who might be really wonderful at giving us what we want for our gem of a property to turn away because they don't think the community is going to be open to any dialogue. Help us set the right tone for the entire community. Partner with us. Assume the best in us. We'll represent. When you have 100% of Planning Commission and 100% of Council, we aren't always all on the same page, as you all know. We're on the same page on this. That should send a signal that this is worth entertaining before you panic and hate it. We don't even have an idea to hate. Let's see. So that's what we're begging you to do. And you know, it is so tiring to try to get on social media and take on every piece of misinformation, and honestly, we can't. So you've got to help us. Make sure when you're communicating about this, even your negative opinion, and you have every right to do that, please don't do it with willful misinformation. That undermines us. It undermines the Planning Commission. It undermines your fellow residents. It's not healthy, and we are better than that as a community. We are uber smart. We're uber creative. We can do this better. Please, let's not go back in time to where we were. Please. I can't do it again. Okay, I'm done.
Thank you. Any other comments? There are no council referrals this evening. We're at public or council comments. Any other council comments this evening? Next are reports. Any discussion on the reports that are in the agenda packet this evening from council? Councilman Baker.
Yeah, P2, the Big Beaver Shuttle second quarter update. I thought about strongly whether I should bring this up tonight or not, but you know what? I think it needs to be brought up. I am happy to see that we are doing what we said we would by putting together quarterly updates, but I am not happy to see what the results are. I recognize that ridership has increased, but if you did some math, you'd realize that it's costing a fortune for one person to ride, and I'm not sure that that is the right thing for the city with this shuttle. I support the idea of a shuttle if it's being used by a huge population and is making the right difference in the city, but I don't think as it stands it is. And I think that we as a council and city management need to figure out why that is and talk about how we're going to move forward. We're 6 months in. I recognize we just started the summer, but I'm not sure that the Big Beaver Corridor is ready for what we're doing right now. There's not enough people down there. There's a lot of reasons. And I know we're spending money on the employee labor only. The buses are donated to us, which is good. But you know, I think we do need to have a study session to talk about what our plans are for moving forward. The report states some very good facts, but I think the report itself misses the fact that it's not very successful at this point, and we need to really seriously and quickly look at what we're going to do to move forward, if we are at all. It's not just up to me to pose that, but I know that we've talked about at a certain point having a study session. I'd like to see it sooner than later, and not wait another quarter to, well, I have my suspicions on where we'll be, unless we have a major change in what we're doing. But as it stands right now, I don't think it's working, and I think it should either be fixed or it should be either eliminated or something, but I don't think it's working.
We're prepared. Andrew Kishnick,
yeah, sorry.
I know we were going to give it some time, especially this summer. I mean, at some point, we are going to revisit this. I guess the question is when?
The idea was September, October. Once we had 9 months, so 3/4 of data, we would look at it. And Councilmember Baker and I have had that conversation, and my comment to him was if the council wants to do it sooner based on the data we have, we're open to do that as well. Schedules are tight, I know, in August, and with the Joint Planning Commission City Council meeting, it's very hard to schedule. Not that that's a reason to not have it, but we're more than willing to do it.
Personally, I don't see any reason to change our plan. I thought we wanted to see how it was in the summertime. Councilman Henderson?
Just a quick question about that. Molly, your next assistant, and it indicates in this report that she is doing some marketing and awareness pieces. Is that correct? Where do we stand with that, and how long has she been working on it, and where do we?
Oh, good. Go ahead.
And one other, just a point before she starts, you know, if we just bail on this and give the buses back, I mean, you know, problem solved, we wash our hands of this. But it also, if we think that there's any possibility that this is going to grow and get more successful, if we bail on it now, and a year from now we think, oh, now the timing's right, you know, how likely are we to get more buses from SMART? So I mean, we have to. That's a tap dance that we have to do as well. So people need to understand that.
We have the whole staff here, Emily Frontera that runs it, Kurt, and our next assistant.
Good evening.
Mayor.
Good evening.
Good evening, council members, mayor. Molly's joined our group May 1st. She redesigned our poster and some flyers that included the map. She also went to all of the hotels and businesses to promote and market the shuttle service. A lot of the hotels were not familiar with it still. Staff working the front desk were not familiar with it. So she's done quite a bit in the couple months that you've been here.
Yeah, we
You could use the microphone, please. Thank you.
We tried to make the brochures a little bit more user-friendly, outline some of the hotels and the restaurants that were accessible at each stop. In the brochures, we are still working on how to disperse those brochures in the most effective manner. So.
Councilman Henderson.
You said you've been working on this for about 2 months, and there's more awareness that you're bringing to the table. Is there any feel right now, maybe Kurt can answer this, maybe not, in the last 2 months, have we seen any kind of great uptick, or is it flat? The report just doesn't get that detailed, that's all.
Yes, we have seen an increase in ridership since Molly began her efforts. With revitalizing the brochures, again, we've made some individual stops we started with the hospitality because we did a lot of presentations to the hospitality committee and there wasn't much awareness. They knew about it, they were excited about it, but they just didn't know how to get the word out there. So we made the effort that's where we began, is the hospitalities, the hotels and things like that, and actually gone and talked to Molly went and talked to the people at the front desk and specifically had a conversation with them to make them aware of the service so they could help spread the word to their patrons staying at the hotels. Molly's also tried communicating with the restaurants to try to develop some sort of special event, if you will. Again, there's interest there. We're just Molly's been with us for only 2 short months, and we're getting that excitement ready and trying to work with the restaurants to see what that looks like, whether it be discount cards, ride the trolley, receive a discount at particular restaurants. We also just recently was approached by a private resident who owns an event planning that's very excited about the trolley. Kathy is her name, she has approached the city to form some kind of partnership, so she would also assist in the kind of a private aspect, promote the trolley. So people are excited about it. We just, like I think Councilman Baker said, it's just we're really trying to get the ridership numbers up and get the people to use the service. Everyone likes the idea. We just need them to use it.
Councilman Henderson. Okay. Mayor Pro Tem Hoderick.
Actually, 2 questions. One was SMART was going to develop an app. They indicated to us. What's the status of that? I lost track.
So we developed an online tracker, so to speak, using our current service providers and things of that. SMART's commitment is limited until we have full commitment that we're going to continue the service. So I think SMART is kind of waiting, along with ordering new buses or trolleys, whatever the case may be, and spending the time in developing the app too, waiting for that full commitment from the city.
Because I do think an app, it's particularly young people, that's what they're using to see where it is, and if they can use it, it's kind of a chicken and an egg kind of a situation. It's too bad that they're not coming up with that right away, but maybe this tracker.
The tracker does show where the buses and the trolley is located along Big Beaver. They are identified. You do see the blue and the red lines running. You do see the trolley is identified as the green little bus going around, and so it does show, and it's pretty live
I have to try to help get that word out a little bit too. So, and related to that, I thought I remembered reading in the minutes of the hospitality committee of the Troy Chamber. I think, Kurt, you were at that meeting. They were talking about the timing in terms of hotel when they need to move people and the needs they have. Did we adjust, or were we waiting for more input from them, or I don't know. I don't mean to put you on the spot. We're doing a study session here.
Right.
And if you don't have the answer, that's fair. You can
We
give
did not change any times or anything at this point. We're just trying to see where the ridership is taking us, where we're at. We do see increased ridership in the evening segment. The red line is definitely much more popular than the blue line. I mean, you do see a lot more happening. I do see my drivers are telling me that they are going to a lot of the hotels in the evenings and picking up, people who are visiting and taking them to restaurants and to Somerset and back. So,
Councilman Henderson.
The question I have about the hospitality committee, and you're focusing on the restaurants and the hotels and that kind of thing, but what about the captive audience of high rises that we have full of employees at lunchtime? Are we doing anything to try to get the word into those businesses?
We did, at first, we did approach all of the major businesses along Big Beaver. We did have meetings with them, and we gave them all of the flyers and the information. That is something that we are looking at to revisit again, distribute those flyers again. Hopefully with this increase. And we are seeing some more activity with the beautiful weather. People are outside more, so.
Okay. All right.
The shuttle versus the trolley, do you have any kind of number? I didn't see that on here. Is that more popular or less popular than the others, or is it pretty much flat?
It's been the shuttle more, because we have more shuttles that are rotating around. The trolley is very popular with the younger people, but for right now, it's been more shuttle service than trolley.
The follow-up to that, obviously, is if we get 3 more trolleys and get rid of the shuttles, is there going to be an increase in the traffic, do you perceive, or not necessarily?
Possibly. I know that we can take or drive more passengers on a trolley versus the shuttle. The shuttle, we're limited to 14 passengers. The trolley, we can pack them in. I do know that we have taken hockey teams on the trolley from the hotel to a restaurant and back, which was a great event for them. So.
Councilman Baker.
I think this goes to my earlier point that we do need a study session, but you know what? I'll hold my tongue on some of my other comments, and I'll save them for the study session. But I think that I do hear from people in the community who love the idea of it, have never taken it, number one, and won't ever because it's quicker in their car, which is unfortunate. That's the way we're built. I rode it on the opening day, and I think it was great. But, with my family, it's easier in the car. We're spending a lot of money per rider right now, and we're going to continue. And I know when you look at our budget, it is a very small amount, but it's still a lot of money per ride. And I would like to see us sooner than later make some big changes to get it going. And if we're not getting people in office buildings to come down and use it at lunch, we're missing tens of thousands of people every day. So if the mayor says he'd like to stick to the schedule in September, October, that's up to the council, I guess, but I think it needs to be sooner rather than later.
Is there consensus with Councilman Baker, or do we want to stay on the schedule?
August, I'm open to August if you guys are. I think the sooner, while the weather is nice, if we want to help get behind this and reinforce it maybe with some changes, if we wait till October, we're back into the cold weather, and a great idea could fizzle just because our timing wasn't good. So
I just don't know where you're going to get a study session in August, but if there's consensus, there's consensus.
My only thought on that is that we missed the launch of this for Christmas last year. When we pushed this out, we were kind of hoping to get Christmas, and maybe we were about a week in advance, but it really was not enough time to do justice. Christmas could be a great opportunity to really build awareness, decorate the trolley, whatever we have to do to make it, you know, more visible and aware. So I'm with Mayor Pro Tem Hoderick that, you know, let's do something as soon as we possibly can, but, you know, let's maybe in the late summer, August, September-ish.
could we add it to a council meeting, a 6 o'clock study session? So we're not adding another meeting date?
If that's the desire of council, yeah.
Is there four members here that want to move it up from the original? Looks like it.
So we'll look at...
If you have some good ideas, you know, there's nothing wrong with calling them up and suggesting them either. We don't have to all sit down and talk about it. If you got some ideas, I'm sure they'd be more than happy to hear them.
Definitely.
City Manager Kishnick, there's consensus to move it up to August or September, I guess, if you want to take a look at some dates.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments regarding the reports? I don't see that anyone has signed up for comments on items on or not on the agenda from members of the public outside of Troy. We are scheduled to have a closed session, so we will be in recess and head for the boardroom for a closed session. Thank you for coming this evening.